Human saves alien girl from a flooded vault, but human finds his name etched on the walls. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Ethan Cole felt the metal walkway tremble beneath his boots as he entered the lower vault, the heavy door sliding shut behind him with a soft hiss. The warning lights along the ceiling blinked a steady amber, reflecting off the thin layer of water swirling around his ankles. His helmet display flickered once, recalibrating to the dim blue glow of the emergency strips running down the corridor. The air smelled faintly metallic, like wet circuitry and old steel. He steadied his breath, letting the soft hum inside his rescue suit settle his nerves. He'd been called down here to investigate a minor leak, yet every instinct told him this was no small issue. A distant rumble vibrated through the structure, the kind that made the walls feel like they were exhaling. Ethan tapped the side of his helmet, watching the water level climb from his ankles to mid-calf in less than a minute. Not great, but nothing he couldn't handle. He stepped forward, the ripples gliding ahead of him like quiet warnings. Just a damaged pipe, he muttered to himself, though he didn't fully believe it. A soft pulse lit up on the right side of his HUD, a life sign indicator. Weak, faint, buried deep in the vault's blueprint, somewhere people rarely went. He paused, his breath catching for a second. He hadn't come here expecting to find anyone. The vault was supposed to be sealed during maintenance, every floor cleared hours ago. Yet the signal blinked again, a thin heartbeat trapped behind metal. Ethan splashed forward, hands brushing across the wall for stability as the walkway sloped downward. The temperature dipped, cold enough to sting through the fabric lining under his suit. The lights flickered once, then again. Far ahead, he saw the source, a narrow doorway jammed halfway open, water pushing through, its lower seam in a steady sheet. Behind it, faint blue light shimmered like a pulse. He angled himself sideways, sliding through the gap. The room inside was small, circular, and half-flooded. Panels along the walls flickered, casting shifting reflections on the rising water. And at the far end, partially suspended in a cradle of old tech and soft luminescent cables, he saw her. A girl. Alien. Her skin glowed a soft blue-silver under the emergency lights, her hair floating gently in the water around her like strands of pale light. She wasn't trapped violently, more like held, secured gently by a harness designed for support, not force. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow but steady. Ethan's steps sent ripples across the surface. He moved carefully, not wanting to startle her if she woke. "Hey," he said softly, voice steady but warm. "You're not supposed to be here. And honestly, neither am I." His HUD warned him the water was rising faster now. He reached her cradle and touched the soft release on the side. The harness opened with a quiet sigh of air, freeing her gently into his arms. She felt lighter than he expected, her skin cool, but not cold, like someone waking from a long sleep. As he turned to leave with her held safely against him, his headlamp caught something carved into the curved wall beside the cradle. Shallow marks, old, worn by time and moisture. Ethan leaned closer, the light catching a line of familiar letters. English letters. His own name. Ethan Cole. The carving looked ancient, older than any human visit to this vault. He froze for a breath, the girl resting quietly against his chest, the water rising around them like a ticking clock. "What?" he whispered, pulse echoing in his ears. But the vault groaned again, nudging him back to the moment. He held her closer and stepped toward the exit, the strange carving still lingering in his mind like a whisper from a future he didn't remember. Ethan adjusted his grip on the girl as he waded back toward the narrow doorway, the cool water brushing against his suit with each slow step. The vault let out a low groan above him, a reminder that the structure was still shifting, still unsettled by the pressure building in the deeper chambers. His helmet display pulsed a soft warning icon, but he kept moving, steady and sure. The girl rested quietly against his chest, her breathing warm and feather-light, like she was suspended between dreaming and waking. He reached the jammed door and angled himself sideways, careful not to let her head brush the metal frame. When they slipped through, the corridor felt colder, the light dimmer, the water inching higher with a steady persistence. Ethan focused on the rhythmic sound of his own breath inside the helmet, letting it anchor him. The carving of his name still lingered in his mind, hovering there like an unanswered question. He had seen the grooves clearly. They were not recent. They were not made with a human tool, and they were not the kind of thing he could ignore. "We are going to get you out of here," he said gently to the girl, unsure if she could hear him, but hoping the sound of his voice might steady them both. He shifted her slightly, so her arms were more secure around his shoulders. She felt fragile in a way that made him slow down, measuring every motion carefully. As he moved down the corridor, emergency lights blinked a quiet rhythm along the walls, casting streaks of gold across the rising water. For a moment the reflections looked like thin lines of script, dancing shapes that reminded him of the markings in the chamber. He blinked, and they vanished, replaced by the steady shimmer of light on ripples. "You can wake up whenever you want," he said softly, not expecting an answer. But her fingers twitched, the slightest movement, and he paused. Her head shifted slightly against his shoulder. Her voice came out in a soft breath, thin and melodic, as if unused for a very long time. "Warm." He exhaled through a small smile inside the helmet. "Good. That means you are still with me." She made another faint sound, trying to form a word but drifting back into silence. Ethan moved again, water now up to his knees. The slant of the hallway made the depth change fast, a reminder that the vault was not designed for evacuation. It was meant to contain, to preserve. He scanned the structural map on his display, looking for the quickest path to higher levels. One route blinked a warning. Another was blocked. The last required passing near the central core, an area flagged with restricted access. He hesitated, but only for a breath. The safest path for her mattered more than the rules. As he angled toward the restricted route, the girl stirred again, her forehead resting lightly against his shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You came." Ethan slowed. "Yeah, I came." "Why?" The question hung in the air, soft and sincere. He stepped around a fallen pipe, adjusting his hold on her. "Because there was someone who needed help. And that is enough." The corridor widened into a maintenance junction, the ceiling arching higher. The water here was calmer, the surface reflecting the faint blue glow from his suit's shoulder lamp. She lifted her head slightly, her eyes opening just a fraction. Even in the dim light, the silver-blue shimmer in her irises caught the reflection like tiny stars drifting in water. She looked at him, truly looked, studying his face through the visor. "Ethan," she whispered, saying his name like she had known it long before he spoke it. A chill ran down his spine, not from fear, but from something he could not name. "You know my name?" Her eyes drifted closed again, her voice a soft breath. It was written. The same carving he had seen. The same letters. The same impossible truth. He tightened his hold on her and continued forward, the vault humming around them, the rising water trailing behind like a second shadow. Ahead, the path narrowed again, leading deeper into the heart of the structure, where answers waited quietly in the dark. The deeper Ethan moved into the vault, the heavier the air seemed to become, as if the very walls were holding their breath. The girl remained in his arms, her quiet weight steady against him while her cool skin pressed lightly through the fabric of his rescue suit. The corridor narrowed, the ceiling angling lower until he had to duck, guiding them through a maintenance passage barely wider than his shoulders. His helmet lamp cast a narrow beam over the damp metal surface, revealing long trails of condensation running downward like thin silver threads. The gentle drip of water echoed behind them, a reminder that the vault continued to fill even if he could not see it. He watched his display as he moved. The structural lines on the map shifted with each step, updating the vault's condition in real time. A section behind them turned red, sealed off by automatic safety doors. Another blinked amber. Only one route remained green, leading toward a vertical access shaft that fed into the upper levels. It was the same shaft marked as restricted. Ethan adjusted his hold on the girl, so she rested more comfortably against him. She stirred faintly, her head nestling closer to his chest, as though listening to his heartbeat through the suit. He slowed his pace just enough to steady her. She whispered something, the sound soft enough that he leaned in slightly. It remembers you. Ethan felt his pulse pause for a moment. The vault. She nodded weakly, her eyes still closed. It remembers your steps. Her words drifted into silence again, leaving him with a quiet unease that settled under his ribs. He did not know this place. He had never been in this sector before today. Yet the vault had his name carved into its wall, and this girl spoke to him like she knew pieces of a story he had not lived yet. The passage curved right, opening into a small circular chamber where the water pooled only ankle deep. Ethan took a brief moment to gather himself, adjusting the respirator feed in his helmet and stretching his tired arm. The girl's fingertips brushed lightly against his collar, not gripping him, just resting there, warm with a slow pulse. He turned toward the next doorway, but his helmet display flickered again. This time, a soft chime played inside the helmet, a low, gentle tone he had never heard from his suit before. A corridor skin appeared on his display, not triggered by him. A thin blue line traced the shape of the vault around them, highlighting the route ahead, as if the system already knew which direction he would choose. Ethan frowned. That is not standard. The girl opened her eyes slightly, the silver blue irises shimmering in the dim light. It is guiding you. He drew in a slow breath. Why? She blinked, her gaze drifting across the chamber as if she saw something beyond the walls. Because you came. Ethan stepped into the outlined path, following the glowing route. The floor sloped upward, and the water dropped from ankle deep to a thin sheet over the metal. It felt like walking out of a tide. He passed his lamp over the walls, noticing faint etchings similar to the ones in the lower chamber. Lines, symbols, gentle curves that resembled a written language carved with thoughtful precision. The girl lifted her head, watching the markings as they moved. My people built this place to hold moments, she murmured. Not objects. Ethan felt the small hairs at the back of his neck rise. Moments. Things that matter, she breathed, even before they happen. The corridor opened into the base of the access shaft. A ladder ran straight up the wall, disappearing into darkness above. Emergency lights glowed along the sides like faint red stars. Ethan tightened his grip on her. We are going up, he said softly. She nodded against him, her voice a quiet whisper. I know. It is where you always go. Ethan looked up the long climb ahead, the echo of her words lingering in his mind like a shadow he could not quite step out of, and he began to climb, one careful step at a time. The climb felt endless, each rung of the ladder vibrating faintly under Ethan's gloves as the access shaft hummed with the low mechanical heartbeat of the vault. The girl rested securely in one arm, her weight surprisingly balanced despite the awkwardness of climbing with her held close. His helmet display mapped the distance upward in slow, steady increments. Each foot gained a small victory against the unsettling quiet that surrounded them. The air grew warmer as they ascended, carrying a soft current that brushed past his faceplate like a breath of the world above. Halfway up, the girl shifted slightly, her cheek brushing the edge of his shoulder plate. Her voice drifted up to him in a small whisper. It knows you are here. Ethan tightened his hold on her, more from instinct than fear. I am starting to get that impression. She lifted her head a little, her eyes half open. The vault listens. It remembers the ones who change its story. He let out a slow breath. I am not trying to change anything. I just want to get us both out of here. That is why you change it, she murmured, her voice soft and certain, as if she were repeating something ancient. Ethan focused on the climb, letting her words settle into the back of his mind. The shaft brightened above them, the faint glow of orange emergency lights marking the edge of the next level. The rungs grew warmer under his hands, heated gently by the air circulating from upper systems. When he finally reached the landing platform, he stepped off carefully, shifting her weight so she could lean comfortably against his chest while he scanned their surroundings. The new corridor was wider, shaped like a long tunnel carved with precision. The water here was only a thin shimmer along the floor, and the lights overhead glowed a steady amber instead of flickering. It felt calmer, quieter, almost welcoming. The girl's fingers touched the edge of his collar again. This place does not fear you. Ethan frowned slightly behind the visor. Machines do not fear anyone. She looked up at him with a soft, almost distant expression. This is not only machines. He did not know how to respond to that, so he began walking. The floor panels hummed beneath his boots, carrying a subtle vibration, almost like a pulse. As he moved, lights ahead brightened one by one, responding to his steps before he took them, illuminating his path as though guiding him intentionally. Ethan slowed. That is not something vault systems normally do. It does when it knows the one walking, she said gently. And it knows you. He scanned the walls with his lamp. More etched symbols lined the corridor, softly glowing along the edges. Some were alien script. Others were patterns he could not decipher. And others, faint and shallow, almost erased by time, looked like simple markings made by human hands. Ethan paused, his light catching on a small rectangular panel inset into the wall. It was old, older than the rest of the corridor, the metal worn smooth by age. Carved into the surface were symbols surrounded by a frame of geometric shapes. In the center were two marks that did not match the others. Lines made by something with a human grip. The girl lifted her head, studying the panel with him. This was the first place you touched. Ethan's throat tightened. I have never been here before. She gave a very small, tired smile. Not yet. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the vault's silence pressing gently against them, not threatening, but expectant. The corridor lights brightened again, a soft cue to move forward. Ethan looked down at her. We keep going. We are almost there. She nodded, resting her head lightly against him, trusting completely. He continued forward, the path unfolding in warm light ahead of them, the quiet pulse of the vault following like a steady breath at his back. Ethan continued down the illuminated corridor, each step guided by the soft glow that bloomed ahead of him before his boots touched the floor. The air felt warmer now, almost comfortable, carrying a faint scent that reminded him of mineral springs after a storm. The girl rested calmly in his arms, her breathing steadier, her gaze drifting over the walls as though she recognized every curve and marking even with her eyes half closed. The corridor widened into a chamber shaped like an open circle, the ceiling arching high above with panels that shimmered faintly like distant stars. The room was dry, untouched by the flood below. It felt like crossing into a sanctuary suspended between silence and time. Ethan stepped inside, turning slowly to take in the space. The panels overhead shifted in gentle waves of light, as if responding to their presence. The girl lifted her head slightly. This is where the vault remembers the most. He looked down at her. What does that mean? She did not answer immediately. Her attention was fixed on a structure in the center of the chamber, a smooth column rising from floor to ceiling. Its surface glowed with soft patterns that resembled flowing water, moving upward instead of down, like the chamber itself was breathing. She reached a hand toward it, her fingers trembling just slightly. Ethan adjusted his hold so she could reach. When her fingertips brushed the surface, the flowing patterns shifted, spiraling gently outward. Her voice was quiet, thoughtful. It holds echoes of choices, echoes of paths that were possible. Ethan watched the patterns sweep across the column, forming arcs and lines that circled them like ripples in a pond. Why would it have a place like this? She rested against him again, her voice almost a whisper. To understand. To remember what matters. He felt a faint vibration through the floor, subtle and calm, like a heartbeat syncing with his own. His helmet display flickered softly, not with warnings, but with unfamiliar symbols washing gently across the screen before fading away. The vault was interacting with his suit in ways he did not understand. He took a slow breath. You said this place knows me. How? Her eyes opened fully now, calm and luminous. Because you made a choice that shaped its memory. Ethan shook his head slightly. I am just a rescue engineer. I fix leaks. I do not shape ancient vaults. She studied his face with quiet sincerity. You chose to save someone you did not know. The simple truth of her words settled deeply in his chest. He looked back at the central column. The flowing patterns had shifted again, forming a circle that pulsed softly, almost invitingly. Ethan stepped closer, feeling a gentle warmth radiating from the structure. The girl reached out again, and this time the patterns brightened, spiraling into a clearer shape. Lines gathered, forming something he recognized instantly. His name, Ethan Cole. Not carved, not etched, shaped by light. The letters hovered for a moment, then dissolved softly into new patterns that flowed outward like a breath being released. His voice came quiet. Why is my name here? The girl leaned closer to him, her head resting near his shoulder. Because you arrived. Because you lifted the water from someone who could not lift themselves. Because every path from here begins with that decision. Ethan looked around the chamber again, feeling the weight of her words settle into the silence. I did not come here to leave a mark. She smiled faintly, tired but warm. Sometimes marks happen when you choose the right thing. The panels above brightened in a wave, casting gentle amber light over them both. The vault felt alive, responsive, almost grateful. Ethan tightened his hold on her, steady and protective. We should keep moving. You need to get somewhere safe. She nodded softly. Yes, and there is something you must see. Her gaze shifted toward a new corridor opening on the far side of the chamber, its entrance glowing with a soft, welcoming light, as if it had been waiting for them all along. Ethan took a breath, stepped forward, and followed the path the vault seemed eager to reveal. Ethan stepped into the new corridor, the girl held close against him, her steady breathing brushing gently through the fabric near his collar. The lights along the floor brightened as he moved, forming a gentle path that guided them forward as though the vault itself wished to ease their steps. The air here felt different, warmer but also lighter, carrying a faint whisper of something like static mixed with the scent of cool minerals. The girl raised her head slightly, her eyes reflecting the soft light around them. This place is not made for storage, she said quietly. It is made for understanding. Ethan glanced at her with a puzzled expression behind the visor. Understanding what? Her gaze drifted toward the walls, where faint lines of script flowed slowly like threads carried by a current. The choices that shape those who enter it. Ethan shifted her gently in his arms, keeping his pace steady as they followed the glowing path. I am just trying to get us out, he said softly, but the words felt small in the quiet space. She offered a faint, thoughtful smile. Intentions are echoes too. The corridor opened into another chamber, but this one was smaller and shaped like a gently sloping dome. The ceiling held soft rings of light that pulsed in slow patterns, rising and falling like a calm breath. In the center of the room stood a circular recess in the floor, about 2 feet deep, lined with thin glowing lines that reminded Ethan of the patterns on her cradle. The girl reached out, placing her fingertips against his arm. Set me down there. Ethan hesitated. Are you sure you can stand? She nodded, her expression calm. The vault made this place for resting. It will help. He lowered her carefully into the shallow recess, keeping one hand steady at her back until she found her balance. The moment her feet touched the smooth floor, the glowing lines brightened softly, spreading outward in gentle waves. She let out a quiet breath, her posture relaxing as if the space itself supported her. Ethan stepped back only slightly, keeping within arm's reach. Is this some kind of healing area? She shook her head with a slow grace. Not healing. Connection. Ethan watched the lines rise in faint spirals around her, not touching her skin, but forming a softly shifting lattice of light. Her silver blue eyes flickered with reflection. My people built vaults like this to understand threads of time, to learn what matters by watching what endures. Ethan looked at the shifting patterns. And what does this have to do with me? She met his gaze gently. You endure. As the lights continued their soft pattern, Ethan felt the chamber hum around them, the vibration low and soothing, like the entire room was inviting calm rather than demanding comprehension. He took a slow step forward. You said the vault remembers me, but I do not understand how that can be possible. She looked down at the patterns swirling beneath her feet. Time is not always a straight line. Sometimes it folds. Sometimes it carries echoes of choices not yet made. Her voice softened. You saved me. You did it without knowing who I was or why I was here. The vault recognizes the intention behind that act. It remembers paths shaped by compassion. Ethan let the words sink in, each one steady and warm. He had never considered his decision to enter the flooded vault as remarkable. There was a heartbeat on his scanner, a person trapped. That had been enough. The chamber lights dimmed slightly, then brightened again, releasing a soft tone that lingered in the air like a gentle chime. The girl drew in a deeper breath, color warming faintly across her blue-silver skin. It is helping me regain my strength, she whispered. Ethan stepped closer, relieved. Good. You need it. She looked at him with calm certainty. And you need to see what comes next. The floor panel behind him lit up, forming a new path leading toward another chamber. The vault had opened the way as quietly as an invitation. Ethan glanced back at her. Can you walk? She extended her hand toward him. With you, yes. He helped her up carefully, her grip steady though her steps were slow. The moment she stood beside him, the lights along the new path brightened, guiding them forward into whatever waited beyond the softly glowing doorway. Ethan guided her carefully along the new path as the corridor gently curved upward, the lights ahead rising in soft ripples like the vault was breathing them forward. The girl steadied herself with one hand lightly on his arm, her steps slow but growing stronger with each movement. The air here carried a warmer tone, almost like sunlight filtered through deep water, even though no natural light could reach this far underground. The hum beneath the floor deepened, becoming a low resonance he could feel through his boots, steady and calm like a heartbeat synced to their pace. The corridor finally opened into a wide chamber shaped like a half circle, its far wall made entirely of smooth, curved panels that shimmered with soft white light. At the center of the room stood a tall arch made of pale metal that pulsed quietly, like the surface of a lake touched by wind. Ethan slowed, sensing something different here. The girl released his arm and walked forward on her own, her balance steadier now, drawn toward the arch as though guided by a memory she had carried long before waking in the cradle. This is the moment the vault saved, she said softly. Ethan stepped closer, the air around the arch warming as he approached. What moment? She turned her face toward him, her silver-blue eyes reflecting the brightness of the panels like polished glass touched by starlight. The one that defines your path. The arch flickered gently and projected a soft curtain of light in front of them. At first it looked like fog illuminated by sunrise. Then the shapes settled, forming faint silhouettes. Ethan blinked, feeling his breath catch. The image within the arch showed a corridor deep in the vault, half submerged, just as it had been when he found her. But the figure moving through it was not the Ethan standing here. It was a version of him without the suit, older, moving with a familiarity that sent a shiver along his spine. And in that image, the older version of him paused beside the very cradle the girl had been trapped in, placing his hand on its surface long before he had ever arrived here today. Ethan stared. This is not possible. The girl's voice stayed calm, gentle. It is not showing you what has happened. It is showing what could happen, what might already echo in this place. The curtain of light shifted, forming a new image. This time the scene was the central column chamber they had just left. The older Ethan stood before the column, his hand pressed against the flowing patterns. The vault brightened around him in a warm glow, almost like a greeting. The younger Ethan felt the weight of the moment settle into his chest. Why would it show me this? She stepped closer to him, the soft glow from the arch outlining her blue-silver features. Because you walked into a flood to lift a stranger. Because you did not turn away. She touched the arch lightly, and the light dimmed into gentle waves. The vault recognizes intentions that shape more than one life. Ethan breathed slowly, letting the warmth of the chamber ease the tension gathering in his shoulders. He watched the fading images until they dissolved completely, leaving only the soft pulse of the arch. A chime echoed gently from somewhere high above, and a section of the far wall slid open, revealing another passage. This one looked older, its edges rounded by time, glowing with a softer white light than the previous corridors. The girl's voice was steadier now. That path leads to the surface. Ethan turned toward her, relieved. Then, that is where we are going. She held his gaze for a long, quiet moment. There is one more thing you must understand before we leave. Her eyes drifted to the older passageway. The vault is guiding you because you changed its memory, but paths that shape others often ask something in return. Ethan stepped closer, calm but focused. What does it want? She touched the side of his glove gently, her expression warm and sincere. Only the same thing you already chose. The lights along the old passage brightened as though acknowledging them both, gently urging them forward into the next moment waiting within its quiet glow. Ethan stepped toward the older passageway, feeling the temperature shift as a soft current of air brushed past him, carrying the faint scent of cool stone and something faintly metallic. The light along the curved walls glowed with a steady white tone, warmer than the other corridors, as if welcoming them to a place meant to be seen only at a certain moment. The girl walked beside him now, steadier than before, her steps quiet and graceful, the faint reflection of the corridor lights rippling across her blue-silver skin. The hum beneath the floor shifted to a deeper resonance, almost like the vault was acknowledging their presence. "This part of the vault is older than the rest," she said softly. "It was built before my people understood time the way they do now." Ethan glanced at her. "So why bring us here?" She looked ahead, her voice gentle. "Because this is where the truth is kept." The passageway curved to the left, leading them into a chamber far smaller than the others, shaped like an oval carved into the earth itself. Its walls were lined with soft light, not from panels, but from the stone, glowing from within like embers. Beneath snow, in the center of the chamber stood a pedestal made of pale stone, its surface smooth and slightly curved, shaped like an open hand ready to hold something precious. The girl approached it slowly. Ethan followed, staying close. "What is this place?" he asked. She rested her palm on the edge of the pedestal, her voice quiet and sincere. "This is where the vault keeps the names of those who altered its path." Ethan's breath caught slightly. "My name." She nodded, and the pedestal brightened under their hands. A soft pulse spread across its surface, forming lines and symbols that spiraled outward like growing roots. At the center of the light, Ethan saw it, his name forming one gentle letter at a time. Ethan Cole. Not carved, not written, formed by light itself. The girl turned to him, her expression warm. "Your name appeared here long before you ever stepped into the vault. It arrived the moment a choice was made far away from here." Ethan tried to steady the swirl of thoughts rising inside him. What choice? She stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the pedestal. "You heard a signal. You came for me without knowing who, or what, I was. You gave up safety for someone you had never met. The vault recognizes choices like that. It remembers them." Ethan let his hand hover above the glowing letters, feeling a hum of warmth radiating upward. "I just did what anyone should do." She shook her head gently. "Not everyone would have. Not everyone does." The vault responded with a quiet chime, the chamber pulsing with soft light, as though agreeing with her. Ethan looked around the chamber, taking in the smooth stone, the soft glow, the quiet that felt almost sacred. "Why show me this?" She stepped closer, her voice steady. "Because you need to understand that compassion is not just an action. It is a thread. It connects moments across time, shaping paths you cannot yet see." Ethan absorbed her words, the weight of them settling into a deep place within him. "So what happens now?" She looked toward a small archway on the far wall that had begun to glow faintly, forming a narrow path leading upward. "Now you see why the vault guided you here. And then we leave." Ethan nodded slowly, feeling a new steadiness settle through him. He reached toward the archway, the warm light brushing against his glove like a quiet affirmation. The girl stepped beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm once more. Together they walked toward the glowing passage, the vault's soft hum following them like a calm breath marking the beginning of what waited beyond. Ethan stepped into the narrow passage, the warm light brushing over his suit like a soft current, guiding him upward with a steady glow. The girl stayed close beside him, her steps quiet, and even now, the strength in her stride returning with each moment they spent in the older parts of the vault. The walls around them curved in gentle arcs, glowing from within like stone warmed by sunlight, though they were still deep underground. The hum beneath the floor had settled into a calm rhythm, no longer shifting, no longer pulsing with urgency. It felt almost like a farewell. As they climbed the gentle slope, the corridor opened into a final chamber, smaller than the others yet filled with a soft brilliance that reflected off every surface. A circular opening in the ceiling allowed a shaft of white light to spill down, bright but not harsh, illuminating the center of the room, where a shallow platform rose from the floor. The platform held no symbols, no projections, no memories. It was empty and waiting, peaceful in its simplicity. The girl stopped beside Ethan, her gaze lifting toward the beam of light. "This is the exit," she said softly. "The vault leads those who have changed its path back to the world above." Ethan looked up into the glowing shaft. "It takes us straight to the surface?" She nodded. "To a place where the ground is whole and the air moves freely." Ethan took a slow breath, feeling the stale recycled air in his helmet mix with a faint current drifting down from above. The light carried the cool scent of the outside world. Damp earth, real air, freedom. He glanced at her. "Are you ready?" She looked at him with a softness different from before, a warmth that settled deep in her silver blue eyes. Yes, but there is something I must tell you before we leave. Ethan stood still, listening. She stepped a little closer, her voice quiet and steady. My people built this vault to understand the choices that shape life. They thought knowledge alone could guide them, but it cannot. Only compassion can. She paused, her expression calm and sincere. The vault showed you your name because it wanted you to understand this. Even in the darkest places, your choice to help someone else becomes a light that echoes far beyond what you can see. Ethan felt the truth of her words stir inside him, quiet and grounding. I did not expect any of this, he admitted softly. I only knew someone needed help. She smiled gently. And that is why the vault trusted you. The chamber lights brightened for a moment, as though acknowledging their shared understanding. Ethan reached toward the platform, feeling a gentle warmth rise from it, like a welcoming gesture. The girl placed her hand lightly against his arm. The vault will seal itself once we are gone. It will sleep again until another echo calls to it. Ethan nodded. Then let us go before it decides to change its mind. She laughed softly, the sound like a ripple of calm water. Together they stepped onto the platform. The moment both of them stood inside the circle, the light above brightened, forming a soft column that enveloped them in its glow. The floor beneath them hummed gently, rising with a smooth motion as the vault guided them upward. The chamber fell away below, the warm light streaming along their silhouettes as they ascended. The shaft narrowed into a tunnel of brightness, and for a moment, all Ethan could see was white light and the faint outline of her beside him, her silver blue skin reflecting the glow like starlight lifted upward. Then the light softened, the air cooled, and he felt the shift as the platform came to rest beneath open sky. He stepped out, the girl beside him, both of them emerging onto solid ground where the world stretched wide and endless, washed in the quiet calm of a rising dawn. Ethan looked back once, only to see the platform slide gently into the earth, sealing without a sound, leaving no trace of the vault beneath. The girl stood beside him, her face warmed by the soft morning light. She turned toward him with gratitude in her eyes, a quiet reflection of everything they had crossed together. Ethan exhaled slowly, letting the fresh air fill his lungs. In the silence, one truth settled around them like a final whisper from the vault. Below, sometimes the smallest act of compassion becomes the moment that changes everything.